After Merry and Pippin encounter the Ents in Fanghorn Forest, they are taken to the Entmoot where they decide to go to war with Isengard. But what if they didn't? It was finally time. The Ents had finally made the decision, and so Treebeard approached the hobbits. They felt this whole thing was rather positive, and the decision they had reached was one they were hoping for.
We have ultimately decided this war is not ours,
said Treebeard. Merry and Pippin's excited expressions disappeared immediately, as if all hope was never present to begin with, and it turned into confusion, anger, and disappointment. What do you mean you decided it's not yours? All of Middle-earth is relying on you. They're playing their part, so you should play yours, cried Merry.
You are just too small to understand. Nobody cares for the forest anymore. So why should we care for anybody else?
Oh, we understand all right. Come on, Pip. We've wasted enough time here. Merry turned around and began walking. Pippin began too, and then stared back at Treebeard and the other Ents behind him, and continued onward with Merry. The two continued on through the forest, but they couldn't help but feel like they too were as guilty as the Ents should be for not doing their part. Pippin stopped. Pip, what's wrong? I can't help but think about what's about to happen to Frodo, and Sam, and the Shire, and everything we care about. I know, I agree, but what can a hobbit do to persuade an Ent? Pippin dropped himself down on a nearby tree stump and began to cry. It's all my fault. If I had somehow managed to convince them, we'd be marching off to Isengard. If it weren't for me, back at the mines, we wouldn't have been found, and Gandalf may have never left us, and Boromir, he might still be alive. Pippin thought to himself for a moment, and he was finally able to muster the courage that he needed. Look, we can't just turn back to the Shire now. We're part of the Fellowship, and we need to do our best for Frodo. Treebeard, overhearing this, turned to the hobbits with excitement.
The Shire?
He said with a fair amount of confusion.
I have heard rumors of the Entwives wandering near the Old Forest. If I am not mistaken, that is near your homes.
Yes, I believe so, said Merry.
Well then, come now, young hobbits. Gandalf told me to keep you safe, so safe is where I'll keep you.
So does that mean you've decided to go to war with Isengard? Replied Pippin with a sudden look of relief that just as quickly disappeared.
No, as I have told you, it is not our war to fight. I will take you to the northern borders of Fanghorn, and from there you will take the pass of Khadras back to your home in the north.
That night, the two hobbits closely watched by Treebeard slept under the stars and the dark boughs of Fanghorn Forest. For when dawn was upon them, they were to depart and begin their long journey home. Early the next morning, Merry awoke to find Treebeard stood, much like the night before, upright gazing into the chaos of the old woods. Pippin! Pippin! He whispered.
Would it be better for us to slip away quietly, without Treebeard noticing?
Treebeard, overhearing this, turned towards the halflings, all limbs creaking and fingers cracking.
Don't be hasty, Master Halfling. You could not find your way here without the guide of Gandalf, so I find it highly unlikely that you would find your way back home under the hill, so far northeast.
With that, Treebeard stretched out his long withered fingers, and grasped both the hobbits, one in each hand. Long and uneventful was their march back to the northern tip of Fanghorn, and they had almost nothing to do other than gaze at the uninhabited wasteland that lay between the misty mountains and the western borders of Mirkwood, and they had heard many tales from Bilbo of the horrors that dwelt in there. They sat on the twisted bark of the shoulders of Treebeard, and every once in a while they slept up against the long branches that extended from them. Merry's face mirrored what he felt in his heart. Guilt. Guilt for leaving Frodo and Sam, and the rest of the Fellowship to an unknown doom. Merry, do you think there is any hope for Frodo and Sam? Said Pippin with a deep sense of dread. There never was much hope, Pip, but if Sauron had the ring, I think we would know about it. Treebeard shuddered at the mention of the Dark Lord's name. He remembered a time when a power darker than Sauron opposed the freedom of Middle-earth, but he wished no power had ever existed. Finally, on the third day since the start of their march from the Entmoot, they had reached the northern border of Fanghorn, and Treebeard laid both the hobbits to sleep behind a fallen tree and under the cover of another. However, this movement had stirred them, and they were both now wide awake, and were glad to feel the wind and hear the sound of the Anduin close by.
It is here I must leave you, and return to my kin deep in the forest. I bid you farewell,
said Treebeard. Wait, shouted Merry. If you ever come across a ranger, Aragorn, tell him that Merry and Pippin made it home safely. And if he's ever near the Shire, he's always welcome to share a pint with us in the Green Dragon. He continued with a tone of sadness slightly invading his voice. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, because this wouldn't have been possible without the help of my friend, the owner of the Middle-earth Discord server, Smeagol. Also, if you want to see what happens next, make sure you hit subscribe and comment down below if you want it to happen. And until our next meeting, I bid you farewell.